When a person reaches 60 years old, they are very likely to rely on retirement pensions for their old age. For those without retirement pensions, if they want to live a carefree and comfortable old age, unless they have substantial assets or dutiful children, it is difficult to have peace of mind in their later years. Aunt Joan, who is 60 years old, neither has a retirement pension nor substantial assets. Her only son is also unfilial and unwilling to support her. In this situation, Aunt Joan sought an alternative path to provide herself with a worry-free old age. Aunt Joan said, "I am 60 years old this year and have lived in the countryside. More than 20 years ago, my husband passed away suddenly due to an accidental injury while working on a construction site. After my husband's death, the boss of the construction site gave me 300,000 yuan. He said this money was all borrowed from others. If I thought it was too little and wanted more, even if he had to sell his pots and pans, he couldn't come up with any more money. The boss said if I was willing to settle privately, I should accept this 300,000 yuan and sign a consent form, and the matter would be settled. If I disagreed and wanted to sue for more money, I would not even get this 300,000 yuan because he was already insolvent. Even if I went to court, he wouldn't have the money to compensate me. The construction site was not making money, and I was very clear about that. The boss often delayed paying wages by several months. If the boss had money, he wouldn't delay the wages. I was worried that if I didn't accept this 300,000 yuan, I might not get any compensation at all. Thinking about this, I accepted the 300,000 yuan and signed the consent form with the construction site boss. After my husband's death, the main support of the family was gone. Previously, we relied on my husband's construction site wages and my income from farm work, so we could still manage. But now, without my husband's income, the family's finances quickly fell into difficulty. Although I had 300,000 yuan, I dared not spend it. 300,000 yuan is not much, and if it were spent, how would we live in the future? The year my husband died, my son was already 18 years old. Seeing me frowning and looking helpless every day, he took the initiative to say he wanted to go to the city to work. At that time, my son had just finished the college entrance examination with unsatisfactory results and had not even been admitted to a junior college. I thought it would be good for my son to venture out into society and earn some money since his academic performance was poor. So, I agreed to let him go to the city to work. Before he left, I gave my son 10,000 yuan and told him to use the money only in emergencies and not to use it lightly. My son took the 10,000 yuan to the city. Not long after, he called to tell me that he had found a job as a car mechanic and could earn 3,000 yuan a month. When he mastered the skills, his salary would double. I thought this job was good and was very happy. I encouraged my son to learn the skills well and not to give up halfway. However, my son then said he wanted to buy a house and asked me to use my husband's pension compensation to help him buy it. My son said that the rent for the house he rented in the city was 2,000 yuan per month. The money paid to the landlord was spent without leaving anything for him. He thought it would be better to take a loan to buy a house of his own rather than paying rent. Once the mortgage was paid off, the house would still be his. Hearing my son's words, I was very hesitant. I am from the countryside with no retirement pension, and with my husband gone, if I run out of money, how will I live in old age? I expressed my concerns to my son, who said that my old age problem was not difficult. Once his skills were mastered, his salary would double. At that time, he would bring me to the city and take care of me for life. My son's words delighted me, and thinking about living in the city made me very happy. I immediately transferred the remaining 290,000 yuan to my son to help him buy a house in the city. My son took out a loan to buy a 2-bedroom apartment. Since there was no money for decoration, he could only live in the unfinished house. My son said that he would decorate the house when he saved enough money. Although I lived in the countryside and had no way to earn money, I still worked hard to save money for the decoration. I raised many chickens and ducks and also 2 pigs. At the end of the year, I sold these chickens, ducks, and pigs, earning several thousand yuan. When my son came home for the new year, I gave him all the money from selling the chickens, ducks, and pigs, urging him to finish decorating the house as soon as possible because living in an unfinished house was very inconvenient. My son said that decoration was a big deal and couldn't be done casually. If it wasn't done well, it would be a big project to tear it down and redo it. I asked my son how much money was needed to make the house satisfactory. He said it would take at least 200,000 yuan. Hearing that 200,000 yuan was needed for decoration, I felt deflated. I thought it would take a long time to save that amount. I advised my son that our family's conditions were not good, and we couldn't decorate the house as luxuriously as city people. We didn't have that fortune. My son, however, said he didn't believe in fate and was determined to live a good life. As long as he had a firm goal, he would surely achieve his wishes. Since my son didn't listen to my advice, I had no choice but to work hard with him to save money for the decoration. 3 years passed in a blink, and the 200,000 yuan needed for decoration was still not saved. During the new year, my son brought a girl home and said she was his girlfriend. The girl looked like a city's young lady, with an air of wealth. Her look at me was disdainful and contemptuous, which made me feel uncomfortable. My son told me that the girl's family was very wealthy, and if they got married, the decoration cost would be no problem. For the girl's family, 200,000 yuan was nothing. Although I thought this was unreliable, my son was always decisive. Even if I opposed, he wouldn't listen to me. So, I could only silently listen and didn't voice any objections. After a while, my son called to tell me that the house had started decorating, and all the decoration costs were covered by the girlfriend's family. Once the house was decorated, my son and his girlfriend got married. Although I attended the wedding, I was arranged in the least noticeable corner. Throughout the event, no one knew I was the mother of the groom. Knowing that I felt uncomfortable, my son tried to comfort me, saying our family was poor, so we had to endure. Once he became successful, he would make sure I could hold my head high. I had to endure what my son said. Without my husband and money, I put all my hopes for the rest of my life on my son. I couldn't disregard my son's words. Although my son's salary in the city increased, I still had to rely on myself to live. My son's life was not easy, and I didn't want to add any extra burden on him. Although there was not much land at home, it was enough to earn a living. Despite not wanting to trouble my son, as I grew older, I found it increasingly difficult to work on the farm. One day, while it was drizzling, I slipped and injured my foot while picking vegetables. The injured foot couldn't touch the ground. The doctor said it would take at least a month to fully recover. Thinking about how I couldn't work on the farm and even had no food to eat for a month, I had no choice but to call my son and ask him to come and take me to the city. My son said he needed to discuss it with his wife. If she didn't agree to let me stay with them, he couldn't make a decision on his own. A few minutes later, my son called back and told me that his wife didn't agree to let me live with them. My son said I should stay at home, and he would come home to take care of me on his day off. My son only had 1 day off a week, so for the rest of the days, I had to rely on myself. My son brought me a lot of frozen dumplings, saying that I could cook them myself in a pot. Whenever he came home, he would bring a week's worth of frozen dumplings. During that month, I ate frozen dumplings every day until I felt like throwing up. I asked my son if, with such a serious injury, he couldn't even take me back to care for me. When I am old and unable to move, can he still take care of me? My son was silent for a while, and finally said that rural elderly people were like that, living day by day and making do with whatever they could earn. My son's words made it clear to me that relying on him for my old age was not a realistic expectation. After recovering from the injury, my son never came home again. He focused entirely on his own life and forgot his old mother. I realized that relying on my son for a carefree old age was only a fantasy. Now, I only have to rely on myself. I have to find ways to earn a living, or else I might starve to death. My advice is, when you are still young, you should save money for your old age and avoid living too extravagantly. Even if you have children, don't rely too much on them. Be prepared for the rainy day and live well in your old age by yourself. Alright, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. I hope today's content has been inspiring for you. For those who haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the subscribe button. This way, we can accompany you every day. Let's grow together, be happy together, and grow old together. We'll see you next time. Don't miss it.